Megger. If you could just pop into the chat box if you can see and hear everything okay before we begin, that would be great. Okay, perfect. We can start, and just so you guys are aware that after the webinar, there will be an opportunity for a Q&A session with Gordon Billings as well. So if you stick around, pop your questions in the chat box, we'll reach them at the end.
Today, we're going to be looking at the methods for EV charge point testing. And we're going to be using our MFT 1741 Plus and EVCA 210. I'm Gordon Billings, and my colleague Peter Wade will be answering the questions at the end of this little presentation. As an introduction, I'm sure most of you are aware that one of the biggest growth areas in electrical installations over recent times has been the increase in demand for charge points, otherwise known as electric vehicle supply equipment.
Sorry, there seems to be a bit of echo going on. Gordon, are you able to just mute your mic, please?
Supply equipment. This has also created the need for new test equipment and also new techniques for testing. One new item of equipment is the EV adapter. Megger's offering is the EVCA 210. The EV adapter mimics a vehicle being connected to the charge point, and then with the correct settings made, it can create various stages of charge. It also has built-in functions to mimic faults on the vehicle that would be connected. These have to prevent the charging process from continuing. It also allows connection of the additional test equipment to carry out all of the other normal electrical tests. We'll start now setting up the EV adapter. The proximity pilot, or PP state, should be set to the correct charging rate for the EVSE being tested. In this case, we're going to use 32 amps. You then set the control pilot, or CP state. This is mimicking the state of charge of the vehicle. If you notice on the little table, we've got non-vented and vented options. So non-vented would be your normal domestic wall pod. Vented would be your commercial fan assisted versions. In both cases, A is no vehicle connected, B is the vehicle connected but not calling for charge, and C and D represent a vehicle connected when it's calling for charge. So if we put it onto C, that will then trip in the contactor within the charge point and liven up the EV adapter. You can see on the picture here that the phase light next to L1 is alight. This is because it's a single phase version. Should it be a three phase, all three lights would be illuminated. But we're now ready to continue with tests. The pre-E-pre test is probably the most important one of all. This makes sure that there's no potential on the earth, and you simply put your thumb on the silver button. If you do it at all positions while you're setting up, you will check all conditions and all charge states when you're doing it. If the LED light to the side of the button does light up, you should stop all testing and find out why there is potential on the earth and what value that is, because as normal you're allowed up to the 50 volts, but you don't want to be leaving anything higher than that on 2 ton of steel insulated on rubber tyres sitting outside that somebody's going to touch. So it is very important to make sure there's no potential of any significant value on that earth. We then have a PE error. This actually mimics an earth fault on the vehicle being connected. This must stop the charge process carrying on. And if you press the button in, as you can see, the mains light goes off. We know that the charging process has stopped. Finally, you've got the CP error. This mimics an electrical fault on the vehicle. Again, it must stop the charge process. It will also show up as a fault on the charge point itself because it's on the electrical side. We now look at the type of tester that you're going to use to do your final test, which will be an earth loop test and checking the RCDs and RDC tests. So that tester has to be capable of doing an earth fault test through the 6 milliamp RDC DD protection. It's also got to be capable of testing all types of RCD and RCBOs. And it's also got to be capable of doing the 6 milliamp ramp test on the RDC DD device. We recommend the MFT 1741 Plus for this because it has bespoke settings in there to make sure that it doesn't trip the 6 milliamp RDC DD when testing for earth fault loop. It can test all types of RCDs and RCBOs, but it's also capable in the automatic EV RCD setting of doing the ramp test on the 6 milliamp RDC DD. If you note, other testers that have got variable outputs on loop test may well cause the RDC DD to trip. Not in every case, but very often it will. So we're going to do the earth fault loop test. So we set up as normal with the Megger on LPE and Z, and it automatically defaults to the 3 low. Because we're going through RCDs, it needs to be a low current test. However, there's a second selection that you need to do, and that's by pressing the scrolling key, which is just off the side of the picture, in order to select the type B symbol at the bottom. Now, it's not saying that it's doing a type B RCD test, we're just reusing symbols, but this is the required setting to make sure that the 6 milliamp RDC DD isn't tripped. Once we've completed the earth loop test, we then need to look at the RCD test. And this is simply a case of setting auto and EV in the RCD section on the selections. You don't need to make any further selections, it does it for you. It will then carry on and complete 6 AC tests, the 2 at half, 2 at 1 and 2 as 5 as standard, and then finish off with the 2 DC ramp tests up to 6 milliamps. Now, very often we get asked, why is the RCD or RCBO tested as a type AC when more often than not it will be a type A? The reason for that is you have a 30 milliamp RCD, a 6 milliamp RDC DD. The combined A test, which has DC and AC elements to it, may well go above the 6 milliamp and trip that instead of the RCD or RCBO under test. So you check the AC when you're doing the RCD test, and you check the DC on the lower rated RDC DD. Just in case you're wondering, RDC DD stands for Residual Direct Current Detecting Device. And as we've said, that is tested using a ramp test. Once you've completed all the tests, scroll through your readings and you'll be able to tell all 8 readings that you achieved. That completes the testing. Megger do offer in the UK full country coverage with the territory managers. Our contact details are on the side here, or we've got the technical support in the office with the phone number underneath. We're there to help you should you need it. Just finally, it comes to me to say, do you have any questions? Thank you. Hi, hopefully you can hear me, Paul. There is a backlog on MFTs at the moment. Most wholesalers know the system well. If you've got a particular need for one, get them to contact their local territory manager. Initially, it will be quoted as 145 days lead time, but we can very often improve that time if you are desperate for the tester. But it's out there. Some places have got it in stock, but it's a case of shopping around for stock or getting your wholesaler to talk to us, your local territory managers. Again, speak to your local. Yeah, okay, Andy. Speak to your local territory manager. It needs to come back to Dover to be upgraded. At present, it's a cost of £92 plus the dreaded VAT. We just need the details of it. So your model we know is the 1741 and the serial number and your contact details, and we can organise that on a local basis. If you're being strictly to the point, 7671 doesn't mention any testing on them at the moment. The AC side is in the amendment on general testing. It seems to be what they're pushing for in general. The AC setting when you do the ramp test is when you do the RCD test is so that you're not going to trip out the monitor. There's no other way to do it without actually tripping that monitor, especially on the 5-time setting. But there is no certificate, so in effect you could say there is no requirement at the moment anyway. Thank you, Simon. I thought I'd see your name appear at some point. Yes, it does include a calibration certificate when you send it back. Hi, Gary. Yes, unfortunately, it's only the 1741 that can be upgraded to a 41 plus. 1711, there's no chance with that one, unfortunately. Right. Yes, Chris. The settings on the bottom, because these were additions to the original model, we're just reusing the RCD symbols when doing loop testing on the 41 and the 41 plus. For standard loop testing, so if you're doing inside a property, doing a ZE or your ZS in a property, you would use the type AC and A symbols that are listed at the bottom together. But when you're doing EV, on the 41 plus, you need to put it on the type B so that the value will stay below the 6 milliamp RDC tripping current. So it's not actually a type B test, as I tried to make clear on the video. It's just using the type B symbols. What we try and refer to it is mode 1 and mode 2 rather than type AC and type B, but you will see the type B symbol when it's in mode 2. Hope that makes a bit more sense. The differences between the 41 and the 41 plus is the 41 plus has a specific setting, a bespoke setting for auto RCD, and the type B symbol, as we were just talking about, the mode 2 is designed for loop testing through the 6 milliamp monitor, whereas on the 1741 the mode 2 is designed for going through 10 milliamp RCBOs. So it's only a couple of minor changes, but just more specific for EV test charge points. Yeah, the 1721, as I mentioned earlier, as with other testers, if you're doing a loop test through the charge point, it may, and it's not a will, it may trip the 6 milliamp monitor, because if you've got noise on the circuit and it needs to increase the current, the DC element can go above the 6 milliamp and cause that to trip instead of doing your normal loop test. Right. Good question, Dan. No, you don't need to be barefooted or anything like that. You will need to take any gloves off that you've got, but it's actually just a discharge point. It's very similar. Those of you that are familiar with the touch voltage point on the MFTs anyway, which is between the two dials, as long as you put your finger on there, if there's any potential, in this case, when we're talking about the PE on the earth, it will illuminate that little lamp. For those of you old enough to remember, it's a similar scenario to the old neon screwdrivers that you put your finger on the end. Didn't matter if you got boots on, if you was on carpet or anything, it would still illuminate if there was potential there. But as I say, with this one, you don't need to worry about insulated boots, etc. It will still indicate if there's any potential there. Another one from Chris. Are you aware of any issues with PE tests like low max under very low? Yes, they can come on under very low voltages. Perhaps we haven't made it clear on the video. It's not a pass or a fail situation. If the light comes on at any voltage, and bear in mind it's potential rather than potential difference, so we shouldn't use the word voltage at the moment. But if it does come on, it just means it needs to be checked. So on some of the pen devices, I've known it to be 20 volts, something like that. But you just need to check it out just to be sure that when you're walking away, you're not leaving a potential hazard. Hi, Andy. No, the EVCC 300 is a checker. It's not a tester. So it's there mainly for maintenance guys. Some of the vehicle manufacturers are looking at it, but it's not intended for installations. It is just for checking existing points after they've been tested properly. Is that it?
I'm gonna wait. I think a few people are typing, just see if there's any questions.
Any more questions?
Yep, a few more have just come in.
Hi, Adrian. At the moment, they're quoting longer lead times in repairs. I think it's 10 to 14 days they're quoting. Normally, it would be 5 to 7, but just recently, it's gone up quite a bit. So you're looking at 10 to 14 days at the moment. I don't know if you want to clarify that, Robert, when you say it fails all Zappi. We've actually got Zappis that we use to do demonstrations on. When you're saying the ramp test fails, if it's got the RDC, the 6 milliamp RDC DD, they're actually set to 5.2, so it will come out lower than the 6 milliamps. With the earlier models, with the software versions earlier than 4.02, because they added in a time delay, you can get higher than 6 milliamp, but as long as it trips off, then that's okay. So if you could just clarify what you mean by fails in the comments, and then we can perhaps answer that one. Right, regarding Tesla, yes. Up until recently, up until they brought out their Generation 3, you were unable to test through Tesla chargers. They had a little chip on board that would only recognize a Tesla car, and anything else it would put it into fault. On the later models, on the Generation 3 and onwards, they've put in any vehicle option, and you can actually do the testing through the any vehicle one. Right, again, Aldo might do better talking about that, or if you can clarify when you say you've had problems. I'm not aware of any on the pod points. We do quite a bit with pod point. I've not personally not aware of any actual issues. When you say it's not doing the full RCD tests, is it stopping part way through, or is it just not tripping? So you've got a RCD that's faulty, maybe, or RCPO. But again, if you could clarify what you mean by problems. Right, hi, Paul. The resistance would be so minimal. You're looking at about 200 mil of cable. That's it. It's a direct line straight the way through. So it would be so minimal, it wouldn't really affect it.
If you guys are looking for the numbers, if you could probably just like screenshot this page, so you have it.
Hopefully you got that, Andy. Right, hi Dinesh. Yeah, at the moment there isn't a bespoke IET EICR form. We have got our own software company where we've done our own forms for it. Most of the things that you record, you just have to put into the notes column on a standard EICR certificate. But if you look at our cert suite, we've got our own EV certificates that you can actually use, and it has all the boxes for all the relevant tests on it.
Okay, just someone typing again.
Right, okay. Hi, Nick. It's an annual subscription. At the moment, it's £120 a year. That's irrespective of how many certificates and that you do. There is a 30-day free trial. So if you wanted to give it a go just to see what it was like, there is a free trial on there. If you just go to certsuite.app, you can actually give it a try and see what you think.
Okay, I think that is all of the questions. Thank you everybody for attending. If you could just fill out our survey on your way out, there should be a little bar with a click here button. If you just fill that out, it should take you a couple of minutes. It's really helpful for us though, so if you could fill that out, please.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Gordon, for
Thank
the
you.
presentation as well. Okay, so I'm gonna close the room now in a couple minutes. I'm just gonna leave the room open just for you guys to head to that link. But I think we can head off. So thank you guys for coming.